I woke up in a novel as a kidnapper. My hostage? Only Serafina Vance, the most beautiful, ice-cold CEO in all of New York City. Sticking to the script, I did my best impression of a hardened criminal and started recording a video. If your husband doesn't pay the ransom, I'm gonna off you. She stared at me with a look of utter boredom. I don't have a husband. She paused, then added, and my money's in a Swiss account. The password is in my head. My brain short-circuited. This wasn't in the script. Trying to look professional, I growled, "Tell me the password, or I'll start by tearing your clothes." To my horror, she just nodded and, with a deadpan expression, started unbuttoning her silk blouse. "Hurry it up. I have a board meeting at 3. I was completely stunned. Why wasn't this ice queen following the script? In a panic, I yelled, "Stop. Actually, I was sent by your father to test your future husband. Congratulations, you're single. You failed the test." She froze, her fingers still on a button, and gave me the kind of look you give a toddler who just tried to stick a fork in an outlet. Then, she slowly pulled out her phone. "Hello, Bellevue Psych? I've got an escaped patient here." Her cold, clear voice echoed from the phone speaker. "Yes, male, early 20s. Severe delusions. He claims my father sent him as a tester." The blood drained from my face. This was it. In the next moment, my life was about to switch genres from a crime thriller to a one-way trip to the psych ward. I'll lunge for the phone, but she caught my wrist in a grip that was shockingly strong. Without even looking at me, she continued her report. "He has violent tendencies. I'd suggest sending a couple of your stronger orderlies." Despair washed over me. The dog-eared copy of the tycoon's contract bride that I was relying on for my very survival was completely useless. The book never said the female lead gets her kidnapper committed. A final surge of self-preservation kicked in, and I screamed at her. "Grayson Thorne, tonight at 7, he's going to screw you over on the Azure Point project." Her description of my symptoms came to an abrupt halt. The pressure on my wrist lessened slightly. I watched her hang up the phone. A tiny crack finally appeared on that permanently frozen face. She stared at me, her eyes drilling into mine. "Keep talking." I grabbed onto that lifeline like a drowning man. My brain went into overdrive, desperately patching the holes in my ridiculous lie. Ahem. This is the second phase of the test. A test of your business acumen. I straightened my back, try to look mysterious and profound. "Ms. Vance, why do you think I chose today to? I'll test you. It's because tonight's bid is absolutely critical." I proceeded to lay out the entire first major scheme from the novel, where Grayson Thorne nearly ruins her company, adding a little extra spice of my own. Grayson bribed your VP, Mark Jennings. He has your bottom line for the bid. He's going to come in just $50,000 under your final offer to snatch the project right out from under you. And he's got a backup plan. Even if you change your price at the last minute, he's prepared to leak information about a funding gap in one of your recent overseas projects. It'll cause a panic right there in the hall. By the time I finished, my mouth was dry. She just listened, her expression unreadable. My heart was pounding against my ribs. Did she buy any of it? After I was done, she said nothing. She just picked up her phone and dialed another number. Pull Mark Jennings's recent account activity and run a check on the Azure Point financials, specifically the status of our overseas accounts. Her eyes never left my face while she spoke, like she was appraising a piece of questionable art. My palms were slick with sweat. A few minutes later, the person on the other end responded. I couldn't hear what they said, but I saw Serafina's expression darken. She hung up. The silence in the warehouse was deafening. I felt like a defendant waiting for the jury's verdict. "Interesting," she finally said, a frosty smile playing on her lips. "A tester, you say? Until you've proven you have more value, you'll stay right here. Don't even think about going anywhere." Before I could even feel the rush of relief at not dying, I heard the heavy warehouse door slam shut and the clank of a lock sliding into place from the outside. I had been counter-kidnapped. As far as kidnappers go, I had to be the most pathetic failure in history. What kind of fresh hell was this? I was so hungry in that abandoned warehouse, I thought my stomach was going to eat my spine. I cursed Serafina Vance and her entire family tree. Just when I thought I was going to be the first kidnapper to starve to death at his own crime scene, the door creaked open. It wasn't Serafina. It was two guys in black suits and sunglasses, looking like they just walked off the set of Men in Black. They were carrying a multi-tiered food container. My eyes went wide. I lunged for it like a wild animal. One of the bodyguards blocked me, holding out a file and a pen with a stony expression. Mr. Scott, Ms. Vance said you have to sign the agreement before you can eat. I snatched the file. Emblazoned on the cover were the words, Strategic Partnership and Non-Disclosure Agreement. I flipped it open and nearly passed out from sheer indignation. Party A, Serafina Vance. Party B, Ethan Scott. Agreement terms. Party B must serve as Party A's exclusive intelligence consultant, available on call to provide all prophetic information. Furthermore, Party B is required, when necessary, to act as Party A's boyfriend to serve as a deterrent. Term of agreement. Until Party A is satisfied. Compensation. Room and board. I threw the contract on the dusty floor. Are you kidding me? This is false imprisonment. I'm a kidnapper, damn it. I deserve some basic professional dignity. The bodyguard was unfazed. He just quietly pulled out his phone. The contact information for St. Jude Psychiatric was displayed prominently on the screen. Ms. Vance said that if you refuse to sign, she can arrange for an alternative location that also provides room and board. My righteous anger evaporated instantly. Hey, a guy's got to be flexible. I picked up the contract and scribbled Ethan Scott on the signature line. Dignity? Can you eat dignity? After signing, I devoured the contents of the food container. Every bite a mix of delicious salvation and humiliating tears. Fed and watered, I was escorted by the two bodyguards into a Rolls-Royce. Serafina was in the back seat, a laptop open on her knees, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She didn't spare me a single glance, as if I were a piece of furniture. The car drove straight to the most imposing skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan, Vance Industries HQ. She led me to the penthouse office at the very top. The decor was just like her, so cold and minimalist you could probably get frostbite. Stay in the lounge. Don't wander off. She pointed to a door on the side of her office, tossed the command over her shoulder, and clicked away on her high heels to go to a meeting. Watching her powerful, no-nonsense silhouette disappear, I got my first real taste of what a queen of industry was like. And I felt, deep in my bones, the profound contempt she had for a kidnapper like me. I stayed in that lounge until the sun went down. So bored I started counting the threads in the expensive rug. That evening, after her meetings finally ended, she took me to her private penthouse. It was a sprawling duplex overlooking Central Park, a hell of a lot bigger than our abandoned warehouse. You'll stay in the guest room. She put me in a room across the hall from her master suite, then tossed a thick binder at me. There's a charity gala tomorrow night. You might date. This is the complete file on Grayson Thorne. Study up on your rival. And don't embarrass me. I stared at the binder, which was thicker than my old SAT prep books, and wanted to cry. How was this new life even more exhausting than my old 9-to-5 grind? This had to be the most pathetic kidnapping career in history. The next day, I was dragged out of bed and swarmed by a team of stylists who poked, prodded, and dressed me. When I finally stood in front of Serafina, dressed in a ridiculously expensive custom-tailored suit, I saw a flicker of something on her icy face for the first time. She looked me up and down. You clean up nice. I pouted. It was kind of insulting, but I also felt a tiny spark of pride. I had to admit, the guy in the mirror looked movie star handsome. The gala was at some obscenely luxurious hotel, crawling with the city's rich and powerful. Trailing beside Serafina, I felt like a well-groomed pet being shown off. Soon enough, the main event arrived. Grayson Thorne, holding a glass of red wine and wearing a flashy white suit, oozed his way toward us. Serafina, darling, it's been too long. You look breathtaking tonight. His voice was so greasy you could fry an egg with it. His eyes were glued to Serafina, completely ignoring my existence. Just as Serafina was about to speak, I cut in, squeezing between them. I snatched the wine glass from Grayson's hand and flashed him a huge, cheesy grin. Thanks for the Lafite, boss. Don't mind if I do. Then I tilted my head back and chugged the entire glass of 82 Chateau Lafite in one go. The entire ballroom fell silent. Every eye was on me. Grayson's face turned an interesting shade of green. I could see Serafina's shoulders shaking slightly, like she was trying not to laugh. In that moment, I felt a thrilling, exhilarating rush. Grayson, forcing down his anger, switched tactics to show off his wealth. Serafina, there's a diamond necklace in the charity auction tonight. I'm going to buy it for you. Before the words were even out of his mouth, I piped up loudly. Honey, ignore him. That thing looks familiar. I saw a knockoff on Amazon for $9.99 with free shipping. If you like it, I'll buy you a whole case. My voice was just loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. A wave of stifled giggles rippled through the room. Grayson's face went from green to black. A vein pulsed on his forehead. He pointed a trembling finger at me. Who the hell do you think you are? Seeing he was about to swing, I immediately ducked behind Serafina. Hey, assault is a felony. And just so you know, I'm a pro at faking injuries for a lawsuit. Grayson's fist froze midair. I decided to add more fuel to the fire, pretending to speak casually but loudly. Oh, darling, did you hear? I think that Project Nova thing is about to go belly up. Such a shame. I heard someone sank a lot of their own money into it. The moment I said that, Grayson's face went white as a sheet. Project Nova was a secret side hustle, a project he hadn't announced publicly yet. He was officially rattled. A flicker of approval flashed in Serafina's eyes. For the first time ever, she took my arm. Leaning against me, she looked at the pale-faced Grayson and spoke, her voice like ice. You don't need to concern yourself with my boyfriend, Grayson. The ride back in the car was quiet. I was still basking in the glorious satisfaction of humiliating Grayson when my phone buzzed. It was a bank notification, a deposit of $10,000. I blinked, looking up at Serafina. She was staring straight ahead, her tone flat. You did well. That's your bonus. I stared at the numbers on the screen, my smug satisfaction turning into pure joy. Maybe being a tool wasn't so bad after all. The joy from the bonus didn't last long before a new form of torture began. Serafina announced that to keep Grayson from getting suspicious, we had to fully commit to the act. I had to move from the guest room to the one right next to her master bedroom. We were officially moving in together. The first day, she handed me a 3-page, single-spaced document titled Cohabitation Rules. It detailed my required wake-up time of 7 a.m., breakfast at 8 a.m., and a curfew of 11:00 p.m. It even specified that the toilet seat must be left in a down position after use. Staring at the wall of text, I felt less like I had a boss and more like I'd enlisted in the military. I tried to rebel. While she was out, I snuck into the kitchen, determined to blow her mind with my culinary skills. I decided to make my signature dish, Coca-Cola chicken wings. To show off my creativity, I poured an entire 2-liter bottle of Coke into the pot. But I forgot to add salt. That evening, Serafina stared at the plate of black, bubbling, sickly sweet things. Her face was a blank mask. She picked up a fork, speared a piece, and gracefully placed it in her mouth. She chewed twice, then silently spit it into a napkin. Effective immediately, the kitchen is now off-limits to you. Then she picked up her phone and ordered sushi. My rebellion had ended in total, crushing defeat. Dominated in every aspect of daily life, I sought solace in mindless entertainment. Curled up on the couch one afternoon, I was watching a cheesy primetime soap opera. The main character had cancer, and his girlfriend was sobbing hysterically. I, a grown man, was a blubbering mess, surrounded by a mountain of used tissues. Serafina emerged from her home office after a video conference and caught me in the act. She shot me a look one might reserve for a particularly stupid golden retriever, said nothing, and went upstairs. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. But the next day, I happened to glance at her tablet, which she'd left unlocked in her office. In a viewing history was the very same cheesy soap opera I'd been watching. I froze, a strange feeling bubbling up inside me. Maybe this Ice Queen wasn't quite as detached from humanity as she seemed. A few days later, Grayson launched his next attack. He partnered with several other companies to launch a full-scale assault on Vance Industries, targeting our supply chain and distribution channels. It was playing out exactly as the script in my head had described. Serafina called an emergency meeting, and a cloud of gloom settled over the entire company. I burst into her office, blurting out every key detail and weakness of Grayson's plan that I could remember from the novel. His biggest weakness is one of his partners, Stratton Enterprises. They have major internal financial problems and are desperate for cash. We can use that to break their alliance. After hearing me out, Serafina immediately changed her strategy. She and her team flew to Chicago that same night and, with surgical precision, managed to flip Stratton Enterprises to her side. A crisis that could have crippled Vance Industries was averted just like that. She came back very late that night. I saw her standing alone in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of red wine in her hand. Her silhouette looked long and lonely in the moonlight. On an impulse I couldn't explain, I warmed up a can of milk and brought it to her. "Drink something warm. The wine's bad for your stomach." She stiffened, then turned to look at me. This time, there was no sarcastic retort, no cold dismissal. She took the warm can, holding it in her hands, and said softly, "Thank you." In that moment, I felt something warm bloom in my chest. Was it possible she was finally starting to see me as a person? Grayson's repeated failures drove him over the edge. He started digging into my background, trying to find anything he could use against me. But he found nothing. It was as if Ethan Scott had simply materialized out of thin air, with no past, no records. Furious and desperate, he cooked up a much more vicious plan. He somehow found the two thugs who were originally supposed to kidnap Serafina, the ones I'd inadvertently replaced. One day, Serafina got a call from Grayson. He claimed to have crucial information about my true identity and insisted on telling her in person. My stomach dropped. A terrible feeling washed over me. I remembered a line from the novel about how Grayson had those two incompetent kidnappers dumped in the East River. "Don't go. It's obviously a trap." I pleaded with her. Serafina put down her phone and looked at me, her eyes sharp. "Scared? I'm not scared. I'm worried about you," I said, my voice rising, but she just smiled, a cold, calculating glimmer in her eyes. I'm curious to see what kind of game he thinks he's playing. Not only did she refuse to back down, she decided to walk right into it. "You're coming with me." My knees felt like jelly, but one look at her unyielding expression, and I knew I had no choice but to follow. The meeting place was a quiet tea house in a remote corner of the city. As soon as we entered the private room, we saw a smug-looking Grayson, flanked by two rough, menacing-looking men. I'd never forget their faces. They were the ones who knocked me out the moment I arrived in this world. The second they saw me, they pointed right at my nose and started shouting, "That's a guy. He stole our job and tried to take credit for it." One of them turned to Grayson, practically begging for a pat on the head. "Mr. Thorne, we brought him to you just like you asked. So about our payment." Grayson looked like he'd already won. He stared at Serafina, waiting for the shock, the disgust, the moment she would cast me aside like garbage. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but the more scared I felt, the cockier I had to act. I forced myself to stay calm and gave the two thugs a round of applause. "Not bad, guys, not bad at all. What's your hourly rate? My production company is always looking for talented character actors with your kind of intensity." The two kidnappers just stared, dumbfounded. Grayson's triumphant smile froze on his face. He hadn't expected me to keep up the act. "Serafina, can't you see? He's a fraud. He's the real kidnapper," Grayson yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. I expected Serafina to show at least a flicker of doubt, but she didn't. She wasn't panicked at all. Instead, a cold smirk touched her lips as she pulled her phone from her purse. She pressed play. A crystal-clear audio recording filled the room. It was Grayson's voice. $1 million when it's done. And remember, don't hurt her. I need to play the hero who comes to the rescue. The recording laid out Grayson's entire plan, instructing the thugs on how to stage the kidnapping. It was all there. Grayson and his two goons turned ghost white. They were stunned. So was I. I stared at Serafina in utter shock. Why had she recorded that? Serafina stopped the recording, stood up, and walked over to my side. She took my hand. Hers was cool to the touch, but it sent a wave of unprecedented calm through me. She looked at the ashen-faced Grayson, her voice as cold as a winter storm. "He's with me, which means you don't get to touch him." In that instant, I didn't feel like I'd been kidnapped. I felt like I'd been saved. Just how many secrets was this woman hiding? After the real versus fake kidnapper incident, I could feel a definite shift in Serafina's attitude toward me. She no longer treated me as just a useful intelligence tool. Her words were still sharp, but her actions held a subtle, protective quality. Grayson's madness, however, was just beginning. His plan had backfired spectacularly, leaving him publicly humiliated. He started leveraging his family's entire corporate empire to launch a devastating attack against Vance Industries. Negative press was everywhere, and our stock price plummeted. Worse, a mole inside the company leaked critical technical data. Vance Industries was facing its biggest crisis yet. Serafina locked herself in her office, not sleeping for 2 straight days. When I went in, the empty coffee cups on her desk were stacked like a small skyscraper. She was leaning back in her chair, massaging her temples. For the first time, her usually ramrod-straight posture showed a hint of exhaustion. My heart clenched. I didn't want to wait for her to ask me for help anymore. I walked over to her desk, looking at the complex financial reports on her monitors. I racked my brain, trying to remember the details from the script. It mentioned that the trader this time was a senior executive, a mentor figure Serafina trusted completely. I couldn't just come out and say it, so I dropped a hint. My dad used to say that in business, the ones most likely to betray you aren't your enemies. They're your closest allies, especially the old-timers who feel like they've paid their dues but haven't gotten the rewards they think they deserve. I finished, watching her face anxiously. Serafina froze. She snapped her head up, her eyes suddenly sharp as daggers. She understood immediately. She quickly pulled up the personnel files and recent activities of several senior board members. Within half an hour, she had her target. The mole was caught. A company VP, a man who had known her since she was a child. But the damage was done. The company's stock was still in a freefall. Late that night, the entire office building was empty, except for the light in her office. I pushed the door open to find her not working, but just standing at the window, staring out at the city lights, perfectly still. For the first time, I saw something in her that looked like vulnerability. I felt completely useless, having no idea how to comfort a woman who never needed comforting. Images from all those cheesy soap operas flashed through my mind. Awkwardly, I grabbed a blanket from the lounge and gently draped it over her shoulders. Her body tensed, but she didn't turn around. I scratched my head, digging deep for a terrible joke. So, why did the Scarecrow win an award? The joke landed with a thud in the dead silent room. Because he was outstanding in his field. I wanted to die of embarrassment. As I was about to tiptoe away in shame, I heard a tiny sound, a soft chuckle, light as a feather that tickled my heart. She turned around. Her eyes were a little red, but her face held a softness I had never seen before. She leaned against her desk, closed her eyes, and said quietly, "Ethan Scott, in all my years, you are the most illogical and most welcome variable I have ever encountered." In that moment, my heart skipped a beat. I suddenly felt that protecting this woman, so tough on the outside and so lonely on the inside, was somehow my responsibility now. Was this? What it felt like to fall for someone? After the crisis, Serafina seemed to make evaluating the variable a top priority. She started being nice to me in her own unique, domineering CEO way. The private chef was replaced with one from a 5-star Michelin restaurant who made all my favorite foods. One time, I casually mentioned I was craving crawfish boil. The next night, the table was covered with mountains of crawfish cooked 3 ways: Cajun style, garlic butter, and extra spicy. She took me to the movies under the guise of researching the offline entertainment market, but bought tickets to a dumb comedy whose trailer, I had said, looked hilarious. In the theater, everyone was laughing, but she stared at the screen with a completely straight face, as if analyzing the film's return on investment. But I noticed that by the end, her bucket of popcorn was empty. The most insane thing was when she hired a top designer to create an entire wardrobe for me, claiming that the company's image is a valuable asset and my contract boyfriend can't look shabby. I stared at the racks of expensive clothes and asked her dumbly, "Wow, business must be booming, huh? Did all the employee benefits get an upgrade?" Serafina just shot me a look, but her assistant, Chloe, started looking at me like I was the biggest idiot on the planet. One day, Chloe pulled me aside and secretly handed me a book, The CEO's Guide to Love, How to Read the Ice Queen's Heart. I flipped through it and scoffed. What is this garbage? My boss is a walking, talking supercomputer. She doesn't have time for romance. I handed the book back. Chloe looked at me with an expression of profound disappointment, as if I were a lost cause, and walked away. I continued to blissfully enjoy my upgraded room and board lifestyle, completely oblivious. Until a Vance family gathering. Serafina brought me along, and we were immediately cornered by a few relatives who were practically dripping with malice. A gaudily dressed woman spoke up, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Well, Serafina, is this your boyfriend? He looks rather ordinary. Where's he from? What does he do for a living?" I was about to recite the fake backstory we had rehearsed, but Serafina pulled me behind her and took a step forward. "Does my boyfriend need to submit his resume to you?" Her tone was glacial, her presence overwhelming. "Whether he's ordinary or not, I like him, and that's all that matters. You, on the other hand, Aunt Carol, wearing that shade of pink at your age, aren't you afraid people will talk?" The aunt's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. Throughout the entire party, anytime someone tried to give me a hard time, Serafina shut them down with a few cutting words. She protected me more fiercely than she protected her company's trade secrets. Standing by her side for the first time, I didn't feel like a shield. I felt like something cherished. On the drive home, my mind was a mess. It was slowly dawning on me that things were getting way off script. I looked at Serafina, who was resting with her eyes closed in the seat beside me, and worked up the courage to ask, "Serafina, what are we?" She opened her eyes and turned to look at me, her gaze serious. She was silent for a moment, then answered in her usual analytical tone. "All of my decisions are based on rational judgment and optimal outcomes." She paused. "That includes choosing you." What was that? A confession? My brain felt like it was about to overheat. Grayson Thorne had completely lost his mind. Financially crushed by our combined efforts and socially ruined by the fake kidnapper scandal, he was like a cornered animal, desperate for any way to turn the tables. And then he found it. Somehow, through some means I couldn't fathom, he learned the secret of our world, that it was all based on a novel. Even worse, he found another person like me, a transmigrator, one who had failed miserably to adapt to this world. From this failure, Grayson learned everything. My identity as a transmigrator and the earth-shattering secret that our reality was just a story. He became convinced that I was the bug in the system, the variable that had corrupted the plot. He believed that if he could just eliminate me, everything would snap back to the way it was supposed to be, and Serafina would finally be his. The final showdown came at a massive bidding conference for a project that would determine the fate of Vance Industries for the next 5 years. Both our company and Grayson's family enterprise were the final two competitors. Serafina, as CEO, had just delivered a flawless presentation to thunderous applause. Just as the host was about to move to the next phase, Grayson stormed the stage and snatched the microphone. Under the bright spotlights, his handsome face was twisted with a manic energy. He ignored the crowd, pointing a trembling finger directly at me in the audience. "Everyone wait. I have a truth to reveal that will change everything you've heard today." The entire hall fell silent. Every camera turned to him. My heart plummeted into my stomach, seized by a chilling dread. Aren't you all curious? How Vance Industries always manages to pull back from the brink. Why this completely unknown man suddenly appeared by Serafina Vance's side. Grayson's voice echoed, high and feverish. He jabbed his finger at me again, his voice a raw scream. "It's because of him. Ethan Scott. He's not from our world. He's a monster who knows the future. He comes from another dimension, and he has the script for all of our lives." The room erupted. In an instant, every single gaze in that massive hall shifted from Grayson to me. Those looks, a mixture of shock, confusion, fear, and morbid curiosity, felt like 1,000 needles piercing my skin. My mind went blank. My hands and feet turned to ice. My deepest secret, the very foundation of my existence here, had just been ripped wide open for the world to see. Grayson was still ranting on stage. He knows every move we're going to make. He uses that information to help Serafina. This isn't fair competition. He's a cheat, a monster. I felt utterly alone, abandoned by the entire world. It was over. Just as I thought my life was finished, a figure stepped in front of me, blocking out the sea of prying eyes. It was Serafina. She walked onto the stage and calmly took the microphone from stunned Grayson. I looked at her resolute back, only one thought racing through my mind. What would she do? Would she expose me, cast me out as a monster to save herself and her company? Or Serafina stood under the spotlight, and the chaotic hall fell strangely silent. She didn't look at the hysterical Grayson. She calmly scanned the audience, and finally her eyes met mine. There was no disgust, no fear, only a steadfastness that instantly calmed my racing heart. She smiled, and her voice, clear and strong, carried through the microphone. He can predict the future? Mr. Thorne, corporate warfare isn't science fiction. If you're going to invent a story, at least make it believable. With one sentence, she made his accusations sound ridiculous. A low murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Then, she turned to face me, her eyes filled with a tenderness I had never seen before. But he's right about one thing, she said, her voice now aimed at the entire audience. Ethan Scott is the single greatest variable of my life. My heart practically stopped. She continued, a hint of a smile in her voice. Before he appeared, my world was nothing but data, profit margins, and financial reports. Precise but cold. After he came along, I learned that Coca-Cola chicken with way too much sugar can be incredibly sweet, that cheesy soap operas can actually be fun to watch, and that I am capable of falling in love. Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, chasing away the bone-deep chill. The reporters in the audience went insane, flashbulbs popping like fireworks. No one had expected a corporate sabotage accusation to turn into a public declaration of love. She had effortlessly transformed a bizarre, sci-fi horror story into an epic romance. I stared at her, my eyes blurring with tears. This incredible, foolish woman. She turned back to the judges and the business leaders in the audience. Every decision Vance Industries has made was based on my professional judgment and the tireless work of my entire team. And my partner, she emphasized the word, what he gave me wasn't a script for the future. He gave me the courage to keep going on countless exhausting nights and the inspiration to think outside the box. If that's considered cheating, then I am more than happy to keep on cheating for the rest of my life. When she finished, there was a moment of stunned silence, followed by a deafening roar of applause. In the face of such genuine emotion, Grayson's accusations collapsed into a pathetic joke. He stood on stage like a clown, pale and ignored. Amidst the thunderous applause, Serafina walked off the stage, step by step, until she was standing right in front of me. With the whole world watching, she stood on her tiptoes, and for the first time, she kissed me. My brain shut down completely. The sounds of the world faded away, replaced by the soft, warm pressure of her lips and the faint, cool scent of her perfume. I don't know how long it lasted, but the announcer's voice brought me back to reality. The winner of the bid is Vance Industries. Love and business, a double victory. Grayson, meanwhile, was unceremoniously escorted out of the venue by security. I watched his retreating back, then looked at the woman who had just kissed me, senseless. Her Ice Queen expression was back in place, but the tips of her ears were bright red. I knew, in that moment, that a new day had dawned in my world. After the conference, Serafina and I were officially public. The Ice Queen and her mysterious boyfriend was a headline that dominated both financial news and gossip columns for a solid week. We were the hottest couple in the corporate world. But Serafina wasn't content with just winning the project in my heart. She launched a counteroffensive she codenamed Operation Downfall. In her words, business matters should be settled with business tactics, and we will return the favor with interest. A full-scale assault on Grayson Thorne and his family's corporate empire had begun. This time, I wasn't just a passive consultant. I was a core strategist for Operation Downfall. Using my knowledge of the original script and all the dirty secrets and weaknesses of Grayson's family business, I provided Serafina with a series of surgical strike points. His uncle's logistics company has been cooking the books for years. We can hit them with a tax audit. That overseas mining project they're counting on for a bailout is actually a scam. We can leak the truth to their potential partners before they sign. They have a VP named David Shun. He's brilliant, but Grayson has always held him back. We can get him to flip. I provided the intel. Serafina executed the plan. I was the man in the chair, and she was the agent in the field. We were a perfect team. For the first time, I realized how incredibly fulfilling it was to use my unique knowledge to help the woman I loved build her empire. Under our combined assault, Grayson's company crumbled. The stock price nosedived, partners backed out, and key executives resigned. In less than a month, the once mighty Thorn Corporation was on the brink of collapse. I was lounging on the couch in the penthouse, watching a news report of a haggard-looking Grayson being mobbed by reporters. Serafina was sitting next to me, feeding me grapes she'd peeled herself. "You reap what you sow, I guess," I said with a smug sigh. Serafina took a napkin, wiped my chin, then pinched my cheek. "Don't get too cocky. After this, you're going to memorize the first chapter of Introduction to Corporate Law." The grape in my mouth almost fell out. "Huh? Why?" She raised an eyebrow, her tone stating the obvious. "The man I'm with can't be legally illiterate." I looked at her domineering. "I'm doing this for your own good" expression and felt a wave of helpless, sweet affection. Fine. I was her man, after all. I'd learned the damn law. We had a long life ahead of us. The day Thorn Corporation officially filed for bankruptcy, a light rain was falling over the city. Grayson was broke and alone. I found him in a damp, dark alleyway, hiding from creditors like a stray dog. When he saw me, his eyes filled with venom. He thought I was there to gloat. "Ethan Scott, you monster. You destroyed everything," he shrieked, lunging at me. I didn't move. I just looked at him calmly. "Tell me everything else you know about this world." I wasn't there to mock him. I was there for an answer. The final secret about this place. Grayson froze, then let out a hollow, bitter laugh. "What does it matter? We're all just pawns in a game." He told me that the other transmigrator he found had revealed the truth before he died. This world wasn't a complete novel. It was just a story outline, a rough draft that an author had abandoned after a few chapters. That's why the plot was so full of holes, why characters behaved so unpredictably. And people like us, the so-called transmigrators, were just test subjects randomly dropped in by some unknown force to see how we'd react. He was obsessed with the stupid original plot, thought he had an advantage. He ended up being the first one eliminated, Grayson said, pointing at himself as tears of laughter and despair streamed down his face. "And I thought that by catching you, the variable, I could win. But I lost him." He looked up, his eyes burning into mine. "Why? Why did you succeed?" Looking at his broken, crazed state, my own mind felt perfectly clear. Yeah, why did I? Because from the moment I was backed into a corner and shouted that I was a tester, I stopped thinking of myself as a reader bound by a plot. I was just a guy trying to survive. I finally understood. This world might have had a beginning, but it had no predetermined end. My future, from the moment I decided to go off script, was mine to write. "Because you were always trying to follow the script," I said. "I was just trying to protect the person I love." I tossed a debit card at his feet. "There's some money on there. Enough to start over somewhere else. Don't ever bother us again." With that, I turned and walked away into the rain. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't afraid. Whether this world had a script or not didn't matter. Serafina was my only script now, and every page of my future was one I wanted to write with her. With all our external problems solved, life with Serafina was almost unbelievably sweet. She was still the same powerful, decisive ice queen to the rest of the world. But with me, she let all her defenses down. She'd close her eyes in satisfaction after eating a simple bowl of tomato soup with a grilled cheese sandwich I made. When I'd scream like a child during a horror movie, she'd call me useless but would quietly take my hand and hold it tight. Lying on the plush sofa, eating fruit she'd cut up for me, I started to ponder a very serious philosophical question. Now that the villain was gone and the crises were over, was I, the intelligence consultant and decoy boyfriend, about to be unemployed? A knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. I decided to test the waters. "So, that strategic partnership and non-disclosure agreement, is it about to expire?" I asked Serafina, who was reviewing a document. The hand turning the page paused. She didn't look up. "Yes, it's expired." My heart sank to my feet. A huge wave of disappointment washed over me. So this was it. It was over. Was I supposed to pack my bags and leave? But where would I go? I thought of this place as my home. Just as I was about to say something, anything, even if it meant begging to renew the contract, Serafina pulled another beautifully bound folder from a drawer and pushed it across the table to me. I opened it, confused. The title, in bold letters, read, Lifelong Partnership Agreement. Party A, Serafina Vance. Party B, Ethan Scott. I read on. Scope of partnership, marriage. Term of partnership, lifelong. Rights and obligations. Party A voluntarily agrees to share all personal assets, including but not limited to Vance Industries stock, real estate, savings, etc., with Party B. Party B is required to fulfill all spousal duties, providing Party A with sufficient companionship and affection. I stared at the overbearing, formal, and yet incredibly endearing and awkward contract, and a laugh bubbled up from my chest. I laughed until my eyes grew hot. Serafina finally looked up. Her perpetually stoic face was framed by ears that were glowing red, but her tone was as cool and calm as ever. Are you going to sign it or not? She paused, then added, I should inform you, this contract has no termination clause. I picked up the pen, and without a moment's hesitation, signed my name on the line for Party B. Then I dropped the pen, lunged across the table, and wrapped her in a tight hug from behind. I'm signing. Of course I'm signing. I'd sign an indentured servitude contract if it was with you. I buried my face in the crook of her neck, my voice muffled. So, boss, what's the salary for this one? I felt her body go rigid for a second, then relax into my embrace as she brought her hands up to hold my arms. She leaned her head back and whispered in my ear, her voice softer and gentler than I had ever heard it. Everything I have. And